Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Maine Public All Books Considered Book Club. Thank you so much for joining us. You know that tonight's book is Almost Maine by John Cariani, and John Cariani is with us for this fun conversation. Before we get going, though, we want to make sure and thank our sponsors, and we want to thank all of the bookstores around Maine that sold and promoted John Cariani's book. So thank you so much. The most
Thank you.
important thing to know is that if you want to ask John Cariani a question about Almost Maine, or maybe you've seen one of his plays, or maybe you grew up with him in Presque Isle, the email address fun@mainepublic.org, fun@mainepublic.org, O-R-G. And so already a bunch of questions have come in, and I'm going to start with my own questions. Hi, John, and welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. This is very cool.
This is fun, isn't it? And
I
I
feel
just
very
want to
fancy.
start. What was that?
I feel very fancy.
Oh, gosh, you shouldn't feel fancy. John, this is my guest room. And what about you? Are you, I see a closet behind you. Where are you?
I'm in my office.
Is this the office that you wrote Almost Maine? Are you sitting at the
It
desk where you
is.
wrote the book?
It is.
That's that's fun. I just want to start by asking you this concept of going from being a play to a novel. I know that often it happens the other way around. Often novels get turned into, especially screenplays, but also
Yeah.
plays for theater. Highly unusual. How'd you get the idea, and what kind of advice were you given?
Yeah, this is totally backwards from how it usually happens. Usually novels are turned into television shows and movies, um, not plays. And this was a case in which a play was turned into a novel. Basically what happened is Macmillan Publishing, the publisher of the book, um, I guess someone there was looking for, I guess, material that is popular but not super well known yet. And they found out about this play, Almost Maine, that had done the rounds regionally at professional theaters all over the country, but also was getting really popular with young people, like people in high school, people in college. And they reached out and asked me. They actually asked my writing agent, my acting agent. His name's Richard Fisher. They called him and said, "We were wondering if John Cariani would want to turn his play Almost Maine into a novel." And so Richard called me and said, "We got this inquiry, and I have a manager who's kind of like it's like having a parent. They kind of help you make decisions and dress well for interviews and stuff." Her name is Vera, and she's awesome. And she and Richard and I talked on the phone. And the first thing I said was, "No, I don't want to turn Almost Made into a novel. I've never written a novel in my life. I'm not a novelist. I'm not a writer. I'm not that kind of writer." And they said, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's give this some thought." And after some conversations with the publisher, with them, and the agency I was with happened to have a book division. So I started working with an agent in the book division. Long story short, I decided to do it. It took me a long time because I was doing 2 Broadway shows at the same time I was writing the book. So it took me a super long time, but I did it, and I'm really happy I did it. It's opened
That,
up the world of Almost Maine in a brand new way.
so you were doing 2 Broadway shows while you wrote this. I just have to ask, what were you in at the same time you were writing this? Were I'm wondering if you were in the same headspace that the kind of people at Almost Maine, or was it completely different?
Quite different. I was in Something Rotten. That's when I first got the inquiry, and I started writing it then. And then I moved into The Band's Visit right after that. And we had to ask them for extensions because we were like, he can't just give up what he does for a living to write this book. So please give him a chance to take more time. And they gave me more time to a certain point. And then they said, you have to finish this by this date. And I did.
Well, I have to tell you now, I'm doubly impressed because I can't even imagine.
Oh no,
I
it was
have a few
great. It's
questions.
awesome to have so much to do. You know, it's the best. It's a gift. Pressure's a privilege, right? Didn't Billie Jean King say that? So
Yeah, it's not that convincing always, though, right? You seem to have a real love for the people in northern Maine, and it comes across in the novel. What's interesting to me is that Almost Maine is the tiny town, and Presque Isle is the big city,
yeah,
and you're from the big city, and
yeah.
so I'm wondering why you chose to place Almost Maine in the tiny town.
growing up, I was very aware in the county of being from the big city. You know, whenever Presque Isle, when we did music festivals and county theater festivals, and we were the big dogs. You know what I mean? So I knew what it was like, kind of to be the annoying people from the big city. And I guess I worked in Ashland. I had a job in Ashland. I had a lot of friends in Mapleton, which are small, you know, suburbs, I guess you would say, of Presque Isle. I got to go to other towns because I knew people through sports and arts stuff we did in school. And I just kind of, it was interesting to feel like they were irritated by Presque Isle because we were the big city, just like in New York. You know, New York State, upstate New York is irritated by New York City. Mainers are irritated by Portland. It's just how how it works. And so I thought it would be fun to make Presque Isle and Caribou the big cities that people went to when they needed stuff.
I think that's fun. And the name almost, it's so fun and so fun for you to play with as a writer. Did that just sort of come to you one day?
No, when we were working on the play, I didn't have a title. And one day, the guy who directed the first production, the world premiere at Portland Stage Company in 2004, his name is Gabriel Barry. A couple years before we went to Portland, we were trying to figure out what the title could be. I think I had called it Basketville, Maine, because all these people are kind of basket cases at one point. And then he asked me where I was from, and I said Presque Isle because he couldn't remember the name of the town. And he said, "What is that?" And I was like, is that like First Nation, Native American?" And I was like, "No, it's French, Presqu'île, almost island." And he was like, "Almost Maine." And that was it. That was the title. We went with it.
Am I right? You just said you almost called it Basketville because everybody's a basket case, but
Yeah.
that's not what I was thinking. I was thinking these are people you really love.
Well, they're just going through some really difficult things. Yeah. And ultimately, I realized I remember saying that. I said Basketville because they're kind of all a mess. And people argued, the actors who were working on those early versions of the play argued they're actually not a mess. They're just having really crazy stuff happen to them. And any normal, healthy person is going to struggle when, their girlfriend carries a bunch of bags in full of love to return all the love she gave her boyfriend and to demand all the love he gave her back. So
I love that example because I wanted to ask you about that. So much of this, especially the lightness that fills people up, the bags of love, so much of this is very physical. And I'm wondering if it's because you're an actor, do you think that this is the way you came to your characters?
yeah, I write as a playwright. I don't consider myself a writer. I consider playwrights are people who create things for actors to do on stage. Um, and I'm interested in action on stage. And in my play, you know, people get kissed out of the blue. Things that aren't real become tactile and tangible, like love is carried around in bags. And I guess I'm interested in how magic and love happen to ordinary people. Magic and love happen to people who aren't the most beautiful people in the world. Magic and love happen to people who work hard jobs. Magic and love happen to people who don't run things. And I feel like right now, maybe it's always been like this, but I feel like the people who run things kind of like to make people think that they have they deserve and are the only ones who have access to being interesting, being fascinating, being in love, being happy. And I feel like, I don't know, even when your life is really lousy, you still have fun and laugh. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'm interested in how ownership of joy and ownership of comfort. I guess that's what I'm learning as I wrote the book and as I've worked on the play, is that you can't own happiness and joy and comfort and pain. Nobody owns it all. And I feel like we're in a place right now where people want to own everything.
That that's really profound. I want to talk about your writing style and how you make things seem very simple, but they're very profound. And one little passage that struck me, and I'm going to be brazen here and read your writing. So Chad and Randy found themselves single again, and they probably should have stayed single and done some work on themselves. But they weren't the kind of guys who did work on themselves, maybe because they didn't like themselves very much. I mean, you've just summarized somebody's PhD in psychology.
Yeah, I'm wicked smart. I'm just kidding. I don't know. I think most things are pretty simple. And people who can write about them really eloquently don't own ideas. I think we're in another moment where if you're a really great writer, you get stuff. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think that's fair. I don't think only the great writers should get things. You know, like the great grant writers get the grants, and I think it's interesting that if you're great with language, you have power. And I think we have to watch that right now.
I love I thought they were sort of Northern Maine jokes, but I guess this is serious to you. Some of the little insider things in the book. And the one running one was how this all takes place on a night when it's 19 degrees. And everybody is commenting about how warm it is. Oh, it's warm. It's not cold. It's 19 degrees. Every time that comes up, I giggle. But you actually think 19 degrees is kind of warm, don't you, John?
Well, in January, which is when this book takes place, I mean, 19 is a nice night in Northern Maine, you know? And you become aware of it. I mean, I remember on those nights when it would be like 25, I mean, you'd be outside doing stuff because it feels great. You know what I mean?
I love
it. Doesn't feel good when it's
it.
25 in October, but you know, when it's January, you're used to it and it feels good.
Okay, fair enough.
When it gets below 10 and then below 0, that's when it starts to hurt. You know, below 0 is when it starts to hurt. And that was just not fun.
It's true. Below 0 starts to hurt, but that 19 is referred to as warm is sort of what's super fun, I think.
Well, it's 30 degrees warmer than minus 10, you know? That's a big difference.
It is a big difference. So are you going to read an excerpt for us?
Yeah. I'm going to read a little excerpt from chapter 4. And I really it's the character Marvelyn, and I'm just going to read this little section. So she's about to do her laundry on a Friday night. I have to put my glasses on because I'm getting old. The washing machines weren't quite finished with their cycles when Marvelyn arrived in the laundry room, so she turned on the radio that was on the shelf between some laundry detergent and some fabric softener and an iron and an old coffee can labeled the Pay What You Can. And she tuned the radio to the country station out of Presque Isle. A peppy song about sunshine, summertime, and six-packs came on, and Marvelyn turned it up and danced for a while and wished it was summer. When the song ended, a ballad came on about a warm-hearted girl and her cold-hearted guy. And Marvelyn didn't feel like slow dancing with herself, so she went over to the bookshelf to see what there was to read while she killed the last couple of minutes on the spin cycle. She saw that someone had added a magazine called You to the bookshelf's magazine collection, which was basically a bunch of old magazines piled on the bottom shelf. Marvelyn bet that the new girl who had moved in on the second floor a few weeks ago had donated the magazines to the collection. Her name was Vivian, or Vicky, or Veronica, or some weird name that began with a V. She seemed like a really nice person, and You seemed like a magazine she would read. The cover of the You magazine shouted, "Your guide to a marvelous life. Be the best you ever." And it made Marvelyn almost gasp and get all tingly, because it seemed that the newest issue of You had been written especially for her, because Marvelyn had always hoped she'd have a marvelous life. Her mother hoped so too, which was why she had given her daughter her unusual name. It was a name to live up to. But Marvelyn hadn't quite lived up to it yet. But she still hoped that she'd be able to. And maybe the Your Guide to a Marvelous Life, Be the Best You Ever article in the latest edition of You magazine could get her back on track. Marvelyn grabbed the magazine and was about to flip through it when the washing machine's buzzer cut through the song about the warm-hearted girl and her cold-hearted guy, letting her know that her clothes were clean. She put her You magazine magazine face down on the dryer and went over to the washers and unloaded her laundry, transferred the wet clothes to the dryers, and threw a couple of fabric softener sheets into the machines. And then she closed the dryer doors and set the timer for 35 minutes and hit both start buttons. She put $1 for the use of the machines and a couple of quarters for the detergent and the fabric softener she had used into the pay what you can, and went back to reading her You magazine article, eager to see what she needed to do to make her life marvelous. While she read, a song about what a girl needs to do when she has leaving on her mind played on the radio. And then a song about what a girl should do with a guy whose dead weight came on. And then a song about what a woman needs to do to restart her heart came on. And then a song about how to survive when the love dies came on. And then a commercial for John Deere tractors came on. And then one for an insurance company in Madawaska came on. And one for Pelletier's heating and cooling came on. By then, Marvelyn had finished the article on how to have a marvelous life. It was mostly about how important it is to exercise and eat better, and to limit your alcohol intake, and to stop smoking if you smoke, and to start following your bliss and pursuing your dreams. Marvelyn thought that maybe it was time for her to start pursuing her dreams again, but she had no idea how to go about doing so. So she thought maybe she'd try following her bliss first, but she didn't quite know what her bliss was, which is sad for a young woman whose last name is LaJoy. So she decided that first she was going to work on exercising and eating better, which she would do after she started limiting her alcohol intake, which she would do after she stopped smoking, which she would do after she had one more cigarette.
You had fun writing that passage.
Oh yeah, I love
Yeah,
that
I'm
passage.
guessing.
I love Marvelyn so much.
And did you just take a moment when you thought of pay what you can?
Well, I actually read it wrong. It's the pay what you can, but I read it wrong both times. I don't know why. I'm sorry. But yeah, I love the pay what you can. That's a great can. Maxwell House, pay what you can.
I love it, John. Thank you for reading. I'm going to start with a question here from Jim from Casco. What do the Northern Lights represent in Almost Maine?
Possibility. They are an unusual phenomenon, so I guess they represent the unusual. They represent destabilization, hope and joy and beauty and magic. I think that covers it.
Our own Rich Tozier sent an email after he read it. I'm going to read the whole thing here. A most engrossing, emotionally involving read. Its minimalist style was reminiscent of both Raymond Carver and even Kurt Vonnegut, with a discreet dash of magical realism. Cariani's use of "and" at the start of so many sentences could be seen, perhaps by some readers, arguably as gimmicky, but it does work in nudging the story forward, even at the risk of overuse. Although Almost Maine was birthed as a play, not a novel, and much of the narrative in the novel appears in the form of a dialogue, a good deal of the characters' actions occur internally. With that in mind, was the adaptation from the play to the novel difficult? Rich.
Yeah, it was very hard for me. I speak for a living, so learning how we read by, I guess we look at pages and take in information, not word by word. I never really thought about that, but we kind of suck it in like a vacuum. And when I was writing, I wrote it word by word because I imagined it being spoken. So it took me a long time to figure out how. As a result, I overwrote massively. I mean, I had 954 pages at one point, and they said to me, the publisher said, "Wow, good for you." So just so you know, when people, particularly young people, because this is geared towards younger people, when they pick up a book and it's 954 pages, that's like this much of your hand, and that's going to make them go, "Oh, that's a lot. I don't want to read that." But when they want to read something that's about this big. So that's how they help me understand how to think about shortening it. And also just, it can't take too long to tell these stories. They're pretty simple stories. So it had to take, you asked me though, was it difficult? I mean, I had to learn how to be a novelist. I've never written a novel before. I mean, there are parts of this book that I think fail. And I don't mean that I think the book fails at all. I just mean I met my deadline eventually, finally, and it had to be what it was. It was the best I could do in that time. And is there stuff I would change? Sure, absolutely. But it's just it's like whenever you do anybody's job, you realize how hard their job is. I realized how hard the job of a novelist is. Anybody who writes a book now and gives it to me to read, I read it. I read it because it takes so much to write a book, you know, so much respect for people who write books.
Are you going to do it again?
Oh, right now, no way. But never say never. I mean, that's just right now. I'm also writing plays right now, which makes me feel safer, and that's a nice feeling, you know. So, but maybe someday I have some ideas knocking around in here, up here, and they will be set in northern Maine.
They will be set in northern Maine?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's my home. That's where I go to write. I don't know why. That's my lens through which I look at the world.
What does your family and what do your friends from home think of Almost Maine and the plays and how you? I mean, is it, if I went to Presque Isle right now, is it one big John Cariani fan club, or are they going to say, oh, you know, I know that I was so-and-so in that play and I'm not a big fan?
No, I don't think it's a John. No, I don't think so at all. I think my brother commented on the number of ands that I used to start sentences. And honestly, the reason I did that is because that when I read it, it's easier for me to use and to keep the story moving forward. So that's about the oral tradition, you know, the oral component of, you know, reading your work aloud. I think my mom and dad liked it. I mean, they read it. They were surprised that it was a book. Do you know what I mean? They were just surprised that this little play about this little town we grew up in is popular and that people respond to it and like it. I don't think they fully understand that. My mom said she just loved the stories and getting to know the people a little bit better. I mean, other people had just noticed that they are in there and they usually get it right. They're like, is this something that we did? You know, there's a lot of anecdotes taken directly from my life, just slightly disguised. Yeah, is that a good answer, Jennifer? I don't even know if I answered the question. Did I answer the question?
It's good enough. I was wondering if that was true, if it were people that you grew up with lightly disguised.
Well, Marvelyn, I stole the name Marvelyn from a friend of mine from college who is now a doctor in New Jersey. Her name was Marvelyn DeCambra, and I just loved her name, and I loved her. She just had this positive way of going through the world. And I thought it would be interesting to have a name like Marvelyn LaJoy and have really lousy things happening in your life and yet still have like this positive way of going through the world. I find those people very interesting.
This is Susan from Belfast asking this question. Is it me, or do we meet as characters when they are super bored with life, stuck in daily routines? Does this say something about you? Do you dislike routine? Susan has another question, but I'm going to ask that one first.
I think that's something that we talked about actually I think I talked about that with my editor because these extraordinary events happen. I think we wanted to really lay on thick that life is mostly kind of dull with pockets of like awful and awesome. And I think we did that on purpose. That's a great question.
Another one from Susan. Do you like writing? Is it arduous? Do you have writing routines? Well, you've already answered the second one. Yes, it's arduous. Is it arduous when you write a play?
Always, yeah. But that's just the way it is. It's work. It's work. Do you know what I mean? Work is work. I mean, work. It took me a while to learn that it's work. It's work. You know, I've worked a lot of jobs that are work, and that's just part of the work. But the end is fun. You know, like having written is much more fun than writing. So I look forward to that. What I love about writing plays is that I get to work on my play for a while. And then eventually, like next week, I'm getting together with friends to read through what I've worked on. So I get like built-in community and built-in social time and fun time. That is not the case with writing a novel. I notice it's much more solitary. So that was one of my least favorite parts about the book, writing the book. What was the other part of the question, Jennifer? You asked she asked another good, Susan asked something else good.
If you have a
at the end.
routine, if you have a writing routine.
Oh yeah, you know what I do? I'm not very, I mean, I have to work hard at discipline and fending off laziness and doing things that I don't want to write. I'd rather I think I'd rather act and learn lines. I never have trouble working on that, doing that kind of work. But I love storytelling. So in order to be a storyteller, you have to put the stories down on paper. You have to record them in some way so that people can tell the stories. So it's not just you telling the stories. So I find that the first thing I do is I get up in the morning, I go straight to my computer and I write for 2 minutes, no matter what I have to do, whether I have to go to an audition or a rehearsal. And that way, if I get started for 2 minutes, I'll tell you, like to young people, if you start working on something and start writing just 2 minutes a day, imagine what 2 minutes a day adds up to 14 or 15 minutes a week, say. That's an hour a month. That's 12 hours a year. In 5 years, you've written for 60 hours. Imagine what you can do. Also, if you're a young person and you go to class and class is boring, you can daydream about whatever you're writing and no one has to know you're doing that. I like to go to lectures and church sometimes. And I mean this with respect, but sometimes they're boring. Church and lectures can be boring. If they're not, you get so much out of them. At church, you get so much out of the sermon, say, or the readings. If you go to a lecture and it's interesting, you learn so much. But if it's boring and I'm stuck there, my mind will work on my plays or my whatever I'm writing. So I know that if I put myself in a position where I might be bored, I will write. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but that's my MO. And then 2 minutes a day, because if I tell myself I'm going to write all day, I'll clean my bathroom, I'll cook a really elaborate meal or bake something. I won't write. So I make myself do the 2 minutes. And sometimes the best days are when I'm like in my pajamas at my computer. I start writing it for 2 minutes at like 8 o'clock or something. And then all of a sudden it's 3 PM. I've been writing all day. If I hadn't started, I wouldn't be there. So I just have to start, because getting started is the hardest part.
You said first thing, you like have a cup of coffee first, right?
I don't like coffee, so I don't do coffee. I play word games, like I play Wordle and Spelling Bee, and I like those things. I do those sometimes first, but then I'll go right to my computer. First thing. I have to, otherwise I'll never do it. You have to know yourself, and know what your weakness. And my weakness is procrastination and a little bit lazy. So it's just the way I am.
I don't believe the lazy. Says the man who was acting in 2 Broadway plays and wrote a novel at the same time. I'm a little bit lazy. Younger.
That was a privilege. I'm telling you, it's such a privilege to get to do stuff like that. It's hard right now for me. I'm generating my own work. That's much harder,
I want to go back to what you said about writing a play and you're going to have a reading with friends next week. And that sent my brain kind of spiraling a little bit into how exciting it must be for a playwright to see the play completely produced with a set and, great actors and then to be in an audience that's enjoying it. What a high. I can only imagine.
Yeah. It's the best. It's, I think, why we do it. And we get to be part of a community. I think it's the only place that writers get to be really part of a community, because your writing is being spoken and shared in a room with hundreds of people, sometimes thousands of people. And that's just an incredible experience. It's different from if you write a movie, you're not with people in the same way. I mean, you get that one experience where you go to the opening of the movie maybe, but it's different because I get to go sometimes invited to see Almost Maine at my friend's high school that's in New Jersey, 15 minutes away, and I'll go for fun, just for fun. That's neat. Or I'll go see it at some professional company that they're doing it and they asked if I want to go, and I'll go. And that's kind of thrilling. And also just seeing other people, other artists take what you've written and make it their own. The cool thing about plays is that when you're writing a play, you're giving a framework for an actor and designers to work from. And the actors and the designers are the novelists. They fill in all the psychology, what the people look like. That's one of the things I love to tell people is when you're making a play, you can do in 1 second what takes a novel a couple of paragraphs to do. Like a description of a woman in a purple dress enters, she's crying, she's drinking a martini, she trips, she rips her dress, she falls onto the sofa. that's all written out in prose, and that would take probably, I don't know, a minute to read. And that's just like lights up, and all of the, the woman, purple dress, crying, martini, it all happens in one moment. And I just kind of love that about plays, is that you depend on other artists to fill in all the blanks. But you don't have to fill in as a novelist. Novelists have to fill in all those blanks. And that's the hard work.
John, how old were you when you first wrote your first play or your first story? Maybe us.
Almost Maine was my first play, and I was 27, probably. Yeah. And that's the weirdest part, is that I wrote Almost Maine when I was 27 or 28, and it became really popular when I was in my 40s, and now I'm in my 50s, and it's really popular still. And it's very interesting to see, to tell young people especially, just do your work, and you never know what the work is going to do, And also, there are more things in heaven and earth than can be dreamt of in your philosophy. I love that quote, because I never imagined this for Almost Maine. I never imagined it would be a popular play. I never imagined it would be a novel.
Were you always acting? Were you acting from as long as you can remember, or was there a high school play that was your first experience in the theater world?
Well, I did a lot of music in high school, and I thought that's what I was going to do, because I was a really good clarinet player, and I really thought that's what I was going to do. And then I realized I just didn't like playing the clarinet, and I loved talking when I did a play. I loved words more than music for some reason. And I love the power of words live. And I guess I just thought, I think I did a play. I think it was Annie. It wasn't Annie Get Your Gun, but it was one of those old Westerns. And I just can't remember what it's called. And I never can remember. Why is that? Anyway, it was an old musical, a Western musical. And I played a ticket taker. I had a tiny part, but I got laughs because I had to give the lead woman a lot of trouble. And I got laughs, and I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. And that's what I remember thinking, I want this experience. So that kind of took the place of music.
You don't get laughs on the clarinet.
No,
or not unless you mess
really
up.
don't. You really don't. Oh yeah, when you mess up, you do. Because it's like, sounds like a goose when you do mess up.
Ben from Scarborough says, so many words have been used to describe Almost Maine. Words like romantic, quirky, sweet, hopeful. What 3 words would you use to describe your own writing here?
To describe the novel or the play? Does it matter?
Well, I think we're talking about the novel, so let's go to that
Okay.
one.
How would I? Oh boy. Hopeful. Just that idea of ownership of good things happening in life. I don't know if that's a word, if you ask for a word. This is fun. Let me think about this for a second. So hope for sure. Joy. I think joy isn't for dumb people. Joy isn't dumb. I think we live in this world where hope and joy are very hard they're hard to put on stage. They're hard to do on TV. They're hard to do in movies, because hope and joy can seem fake in a way that sadness doesn't. I think hope and joy are really important components of stories and storytelling and drama. And I think I would just say hope and joy. Hope and joy aren't dumb, and aren't for dumb people. Aren't hopeful and joyful. Smart people are hopeful and joyful. All people are hopeful and joyful. That's what I would say.
This is a really fun reader comment, John. Hi, John. When you were at Presque Isle High School, you were in the play Grease as Duty. The girl that played Frenchie, who I heard was fabulous. Isn't it true she was one of your greatest scene partners ever? Asking for a friend.
Is that Julie?
It is. Somebody named Julie is writing that.
And she was awesome. She was so good. We had so much fun together. We did.
So you were Duty?
I was Duty, yeah. We were awesome together.
That's fun. Well, there you go. You do have a fan
Hi,
club in
Julie.
Presque Isle.
We were the Shipmates Playhouse. Presque Isle High School. Backwards is SHIP. Shipmates Playhouse. Isn't that clever?
That's
I don't know if it still is, but that's what we were.
June from Berwick, different at the corner of Maine. Like any short story collection, I have my favorites. Do you have more favorite elements and why? You've already told us you really like Marvelin.
I really like the new story. I think it's chapter 6. Um, it's Almost Maine originally, like I had originally written a non-binary story for Almost Maine, but back in the late 90s, nobody really knew what to make of those stories. And I remember people, I didn't share them with many people. I don't know why, if I was scared or what. That's I don't know. That's a deep dive. We won't go there, but I think people didn't quite know what to make of it. I remember, and so I kind of let it go. And I've actually so I got to include a version of that story in the novel, and I'm very proud of that story. I think that's a really nifty story, and I think sometimes people forget to think about the what it's like when someone realizes that they're non-binary or queer or whatever. Just remembering the moment that people start to figure that stuff out, and the turmoil that goes on inside, and hopefully in a few years that turmoil will disappear because it won't be a big deal. And I can't wait. I can't wait for that day.
This is from Rachel from Presque Isle. I'd like to ask John Cariani about his concept of finding beauty in a place that is bleak. Did he wonder about this growing up in Maine, or is it something he decided to explore as an adult? And also, how does it compare with finding beauty during a time when things look bleak? And Rachel is from Presque Isle, so if she wasn't, I would say something about someone judging Aroostook County as being bleak. But she's writing this from your hometown.
I guess, I mean, I mean, winter in northern Maine is long and hard, and school is winter. That's what, it feels like school is winter. School is September until June, I guess. And it feels like winter pretty much until May. I remember that. Of course, I did read recently that the 80s were a super cold time. So like I was in school during one of the coldest periods in the northeastern United States' history, I guess. But I just remember so much snow, so much cold, but so beautiful, like beautiful sunny days where you would cross country ski all day. Um, Stars, like I didn't know that you couldn't see the stars in other places until I went to college. I didn't know that, like when I went to college, all the towns, there was no division in the towns. Like you would go from one town to the next town, and there would just be a sign, and it would feel like all the same. And in northern Maine, you're in Presque Isle, then you leave Presque Isle, and then you drive about 10, 12 miles and you're in Caribou. And then you leave Caribou. I don't even know what you hit next, but the towns are all separated by space. So when I went away to college, I remember missing the emptiness, and it was just so pretty because there were fewer people, less light pollution. Um, that was the thing, the light pollution when I went to college. I just remember you couldn't really see the stars. I went to school in the middle of Massachusetts, and it was still pretty bright. But finding beauty, I mean, I guess I wanted to leave because I wanted to go do my own thing. And when I left, I realized how beautiful the place I grew up in was, and how special it is, and how it gets really dark up there. And there are, 80% of Americans can't see the stars. And I just feel lucky that I grew up in a place where I could. I'm one of the 20% that could. So I know what that is. I know. And I think it creates a humility in people when you can see the sky, and when you can see the night sky, and when you live through an Aroostook County winter, you are humbled by nature, and you are aware that there is much more in control than just you and then just humans. And I think that's maybe why there's some humility there that doesn't always exist in New York City.
New York City
or,
people
or Portland.
need the stars.
Yeah, even Portland. I mean, Portland, you can't see the stars. I was shocked. I was like, you really can't.
Do you think so? So it was going away from home that made you appreciate home. Isn't
Oh,
that so
absolutely.
often the American story?
Well, yeah, we're taught to go, especially boys. When I was growing up, boys were just taught to go and conquer and go on quests and find stuff, learn stuff. Um, yeah, I mean, getting to go out into the world and realizing how much I was homesick when I went to college. And I was surprised by that because I had never really been homesick when I went away to camps and stuff, music camp or theater camp or anything like that. I don't really remember being homesick, but when I went to college, I was homesick. I missed the space and I missed the cold. I missed winter. I know that sounds crazy, but I missed winter.
Do you still, I mean, you're talking to us from the Bronx right now. Do you go get a fix regularly? Do you come
Oh
to
yeah, yeah,
home
yeah.
to
Well,
Aroostook County?
oh yeah, well, my husband has ties to Maine. He has family still there. I don't have family still there, but I have friends, and I love to go up. I love to go up, and I know he and his brother go up and go snowmobiling. They went snowshoeing last winter. I didn't get to go because I was working, which is a good thing, but I miss winter and I love it. Like we want to go cross country skiing up there this winter. That's one of the things we want to do. It's so
Julie from
hard though. I forget how
Southport.
hard it is. What'd you say?
Oh, I just was going to go to another question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go.
This is for Julie from South Portland. You already answered the second part. She says, almost isn't a city or town, right? What does the title actually mean? So you talked about where you got the title, but
Yep.
but is almost a town? What is almost?
I would say that almost is like around Portage Lake, maybe an area around there. That's what I would say. My aunt, we used to go to Portage a lot because my aunt and uncle rented a camp there one summer for a couple weeks. They were from Massachusetts, and I spent a lot of time there. And then I had friends who had camps on lakes like Portage, Cross Lake, Echo Lake, and that's my probably my favorite memory of Northern Maine is life at camp. Did I answer the question? I can't remember.
So it's kind of just, it's a place, but not really
Yeah,
a
yeah.
town.
I would say it's like Portage.
Okay.
They don't know that though. I don't know if I've ever really said that, but I think I say that in the play that it's like based on Portage, Maine, Portage Lake, Maine.
Um, do these characters, you know, you said you wrote this when you were 27 years old. Have the characters stayed with you and have they aged?
Well, how could they not? The play got popular, so it's kind of been like something that I bring with me everywhere I go. And it's weird because I'm known for the play more than anything I've done, which is very surprising. I mean, the last couple Broadway shows I've done, I've signed plays of Almost Maine, not the program of the play I'm doing. I'm kind of like, but wait, I was in this play. What? Okay, so that's been kind of cool. Do they get older? No, they definitely don't get older. They are who they are. And I'm excited for them to live on. Like right now, there is a musical version of Almost Maine in the offing. And
No.
I'm very
Where's
excited
that?
to, huh?
Where is that?
That is in here right now. It's being developed. It is
Oh, I
nowhere.
see.
But
I thought you were saying that somebody
that is
was.
that's the next step for Almost Maine, which is really exciting because
Are you
talk
going to
about
write the
hope and joy.
songs?
No, I'll be writing the book part, which is the story part to help. And it's funny. It's a complete reimagining of the play and the novel. We have to completely reimagine it. But the fun part of the musical is that the hope and joy can be off the charts. And also all the beauty of the place can be like really explored, like the Northern Lights and the snow. I'm very excited about that.
That's so exciting. And
I want it
again,
to
you're
be
going to be collaborating, right?
yeah, I'll be collaborating with a composer and a lyricist.
And there is music in the novel. I mean, there are so many places
Yeah.
in the convenience store in chapter 6,
Yeah.
when in the dance. I mean, there's so many opportunities. So
Yep.
that's a great idea. Another thing I loved, I just am looking, John, at where I've marked little marks. Tooling around was one of the most popular pastimes for young people in Northern Maine, especially in winter because cars were warm and, more important, private. I love that.
Oh yeah. You could talk about things in a car that you just couldn't talk about in your house, at school. I remember that's where I shared my deepest, darkest secrets with my friends was when we would drive from the University of Maine at Presque Isle, which is in the south end of town, all the way to McDonald's, which was getting towards the north end of town. And we would get French fries and we would eat our French fries and talk and just keep driving the same loop over and over. And we probably ate many servings of French fries because that was back when I could eat a lot of French fries and not feel horrible. But that was super fun. Definitely a wonderful memory.
I so love that it's going to be a musical. And before I let you go, I have to ask you, you said you're working on a couple plays. What else are you working on?
I'm working on a new play. There's a collection of short plays, and it's going to be called Idiomatic, and it's based on idioms. A couple of friends of mine and I were joking about this play in front of some people who own a publishing company. And they thought it was a great idea, so they kind of hired us to write this play. And so far, the idioms that we're using, because Almost Maine has some idioms, like a broken heart is made, someone has a broken heart. Two people fall in love, literally. So there are some idioms, like some idioms are made real. Is that the right word? They're made, the metaphor is made real. So we were talking about other idioms that we thought were really interesting. And so I'm writing, one of the stories is about someone who's beside herself. So she actually has someone who is herself, enters and is beside herself. The Devil's Advocate is another one that we're working on. Ripped My Heart Out. We're thinking of making like a Halloween version where really horrible things like cried my eyes out, ripped my heart out. Anyway, that's the conceit. So I'm working on that. And I've also got, I'm writing a new play set in Northern Maine that is a love story that I can't say too much about because it's so new, but it's a really beautiful love story. And one of the main characters is someone who drank and drive while she was riding her snowmobile and paid the price. And I think you hear about that stuff and it's very interesting. So, and I'm working on another collection of plays that are all of my Almost Maine rejects, I call them. It's going to be called Not Quite Almost. And it's a bunch of stories, short plays that never made it into Almost Maine, but that are of that world. And the publisher of Almost Maine found out about them and said, we should just put these together and publish them. So that's what I'm working on. It's awesome. I'm very lucky to have a lot of things to work on. And I'm very happy.
Well, we're very happy you joined us for the book club, and congratulations on the novel. I know it's not brand new. It's been out for a couple of years, but I hope that
the cool thing is
has a life of its own. Like,
the paperback is coming out. So the timing's perfect because there's a paperback version coming out in January.
That's great.
Yay.
Tell your friends.
Yeah.
And
I'll tell my friends. You tell your friends.
What I was going to say is I hope the novel takes on a life of its own like the play has.
I do too. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh. So fun. Such a treat. And we just can't wait to see what you come up with next.
Did
John
we talk for long enough?
We did.
We did? Okay. I just wanted to make sure that you didn't need me to do anything else.
But I do need to promote our next title for September. We have nonfiction, Down East, 5 Maine Girls and the Unseen Story of Rural America by Gigi Georges. And that event is December 15th and will be hosted by Cindy Hahn. Thank you so much for joining us for the Maine.
Wait, can I just say that sounds so interesting, because one of the things I'm learning right now is that the way rural America is depicted in contemporary art and culture, it just seems that so many TV shows are about, I don't know, if you're in a rural place, it's about who you voted for and what drugs you do. I'm like, yeah, that is a component of rural America, but there's so much more. I think we're realizing right now across the board that multidimensionality isn't owned by one group of people. You know what I mean? And so multidimensionalizing all of these people who have been kind of pushed to the fringes, it's just a really exciting time. And I'm really interested in multidimensionalizing rural people, and also multidimensionalizing I think love is for everybody. And I think love stories, everyone has a love story that's really beautiful and really special. And they're not confined to the super hot people in the world. And I think that's something I'm really interested in exploring.
God love you. I think that there are a lot of people sitting at home right now just nodding and smiling and saying, right on, John.
Well, thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
having me. What an
Oh
honor.
my gosh. Thank you for being here. And thank you to everybody who's joining us and picked up the book at a local bookstore and is out with us tonight. That's it for us
Thank
for
you.
November.
All right. Bye, Jennifer. Thank you.